Hello and welcome to Macro Mondays. It's episode 2, and we have a lot on the docket to talk about today. Just to note, a clear disclaimer that none of this is financial advice or a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any securities or investment. This is just commentary about what's going on in the world and discussing events that could be topical for what's going on at the moment. So first of all, Biden is out and Kamala is in, with some whispers of potentially an Obama VP, which would be super unlikely, but it's kind of interesting that it's been mentioned. This is obviously on the back of weak performances from a debate perspective, when Biden and Trump were in a debate, and then with the assassination attempt that has become one of the most popular memes on the internet right now. The Democrats had to do something. There's been quite a lot of speculation over the last month or so that this would happen. So the hot swap is in, and now we'll see how Kamala can pull the Democrats together to try and win the election versus Trump, which is going to be quite a tall order given the meme that was created from the assassination attempt. However, if Obama comes in, I think that would be a really interesting twist, and that would change the polls, I'm sure. Second on the docket today is talking about mid-caps. A lot of excitement in the small and mid-cap space last week, coming off the back of some of the worst data in history. So small and mid-cap companies have performed the most poorly in history over the last couple of years versus the S&P 500, driven by general poor performance by the small and mid-cap space, but also very strong performance from the Mag 7, which hold huge weightings in the S&P 500. So as you can see here, we've got a chart of the SPY and QQQ, which is kind of your S&P 500 and your NASDAQ 100. As you can see, they've been far outperforming the IWM, which is the Russell 2000, until just a few days ago, where we started to see a lot of strength out of the IWM. And that was off the back of weak inflation data, where the market is speculating that with lower rates, it'll be much better for small and mid-cap companies. So it'll be really interesting to see if that has follow-through. But on a relative basis, the small and mid-cap companies over the last couple of years have performed extremely poorly versus the S&P 500, but that could change in the future. So it'll be interesting to watch and see if this rally has some follow-through. Over the weekend, we had a historical outage by Crowdstrike, causing chaos across airports, casinos, hotels all over the world, and parts of the internet where Microsoft cloud services were in play and the operating system. This goes to show a couple of things. One being that security is such an important part of the world we live in these days, and that you have to keep your system secure, and small bugs can cause masses of chaos. And then the second piece being that as the world becomes more intertwined in a technology landscape, in the cloud landscape, we're likely to see more of these black swan events where something essentially becomes a bottleneck or a dependency, and when it breaks, it has a cascading effect. So this isn't too surprising. We've had similar events in the past, but not to this severity where for such a long period of time as well, systems have been down. Subsequently, with the stock price of CrowdStrike and Microsoft over the last month, CrowdStrike's almost down 20%. So not sure what that means, but you can see the clear reaction at the end of the week last week as the outage became public knowledge. This doesn't really reflect on the fundamental value of CrowdStrike. However, these sort of catalysts can lead to potentially clients leaving and potential damages through lawsuits. So we're not sure how this is going to pay out, but the stock price did react by almost 20% over the last month. Not all of that was driven by the event, as it only happened Friday, but definitely interesting to see. Microsoft were also slightly affected, but not so severely from a stock price perspective. Ultimately, these sort of events drive the stock price in the short term, but we're not sure where it will go in the future. It's definitely interesting to see how kind of a seemingly small piece of the puzzle can have such cascading effects across the cloud. So who is still in the Nvidia trade? On the right hand side of here, I've got the chart with the current after hours or pre-market price coming into Monday. So from the qualitative and quantitative research that we've been doing, we are hearing a lot of rumblings that hedge funds have sold. We see from filings every day that more and more insiders are selling. And from commentary from long-only fund managers, we hear a lot of profit taking or trimming, as it's called in the business, of their positions. So they're not fully out. They still believe in the momentum. They still believe in the long-term story, but we are hearing that the prudent fund managers are starting to potentially reduce their exposure to the name and start talking about some rebalancing out of semiconductors into other names. So we're not sure what's going on here, but what we often observe is that the buy and hold until the story changes investors, those guys are the most dangerous. And that's when in 2000 Cisco missed by a penny on their earnings and they sent the stock in a free fall. So the kind of buy and hold until the story changes investors typically make big moves and dump shares whenever earnings eventually disappoint or lose their momentum's positive trajectory. And then that leaves what's typically the last people holding the asset. And this isn't a short-term kind of event, but it's important to note that this is typically how things play out. That would then leave retail having most of the exposure to Nvidia at all-time highs. So we're definitely going to be following along this story, especially when these large names end up being huge factors in the global markets and the feel of the stock market. So we'll see how this continues to unfold, and we'll continue to track it regularly. Thank you for tuning in to another one of our Macro Mondays. So we hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you next time.